Hi everyone, welcome to the YouTube channel of Anthropology for UPSC, and in this video series we are discussing the trend, themes and strategies of UPSC paper 1 2025. So this is going to be the third part of this series. So without wasting any time, let's get started. We will talk about block 3, which contain question number 3A, 3B and 3C. Further, I'll also take up block 4 in this particular video also. Okay. So this question is asking you about the nutritional status and the intersectionality with various aspects including ecology, culture, social inequality while study of nutritional anthropology. So if you see whether this question is coming out of context, not really, because in your syllabus you are going to study about the nutritional status and nutritional anthropology, to be specific, in your topic 12, which is part of your applied anthropology. So you can say that this question is kind of a direct question from your syllabus, though you would require certain knowledge from the other section, which we call as the interlinkages with the other part of your syllabus, to able to answer this question. And because of that thing, this question could be a little on a tougher side, not in terms of content but in terms of your presentation and how you are inculcating all the knowledge that you have acquired while covering your syllabus. Okay, so you could say that this is the applied or the analytical part of the question, because here you are also going to maybe include some part of the anthropometry, where you're talking about the BMI, the dietary surveys, or maybe the biomarkers as well. So this will help you answer this question in an holistic manner, right? And you also know that nutrition is kind of shaped by various factors. If you say like ecology, okay, so in terms of ecology, it could be famine or the drought conditions. When you say culture, so it could be the food taboos or the like caste rules. There also you will find so many food rules, right? This can eat this cannot eat this. During pregnancy, women are allowed to eat this and not this. And at different regions, you will find certain examples related to it. Then the inequality. So in terms of inequality, you can show how the National Family Health Survey shows the higher anemic content, higher anemic occurrence in the SC/STs. Similarly, you can quote some case studies related to those tribes. So this is how you will be able to answer this particular question. And if you have like good examples to quote over here, so it will be kind of manageable for you to deal with this particular question. The next question is asking you to critically examine the drawback in assuming culture as an integrated closed system in understanding the contemporary society. So here you basically need to do a critical analysis of what the uh, like scholars like Malinowski, Redcliffe, Brown was thinking about culture, and what the contemporary anthropologist or the recent one, for example, Arjun Appadurai, maybe Frederick Barth, what they all are thinking about culture. Or you could also say in general the postmodernism or the postmodernist anthropologist, what they are thinking about culture. Okay, so now if you think like where this question fits in, so it fits in very well in your 2.1, also the theories. Okay, so you could say this question is kind of an interlinkages with both of these. Then, in terms of the level, again, wherever there is kind of an interlinkages where you need to think a little bit more, I would call them as a tougher question, but something again manageable if you have prepared the topics well. Okay, then again, it is analytical question. It is not something asking you about the factual details. There is no factual details that you need to present. Rather, you need to do the critical examination. And mind it, the directive of the question is very, very important. So don't overlook this particular thing. Now, how can you answer this particular question? See, UPSC want you to critique this and say that the modern culture, okay, the culture that maybe like you are living today, this modern culture is not closed, okay. Why not closed? So then you need to present the arguments related to it, because today's culture is shaped mostly by migration. Your globalization plays a very important role, okay. Then your political movement across the globe, they also play a very important role. You can talk about the Gen Z movement that was going on. So all of these things you can very well include. So here you can also bring out some examples from your GS. That is the advantage. And as I keep on telling, like, anthropology is one such subject where none of your knowledge will go for waste if you try and use it properly. But when you see like what the anthropologists were thinking during the 18th century or the 19th century at that point of time, so they were focusing mostly it as a closed system. But now, for example, you can also talk about like caste. Do you think like caste is a closed system now? Because it interact with various other things like your democracy, your law, or even the economy. And this demand show that like why we need to see culture as an open, dynamic, and a hybrid thing. So these all are the arguments which you can show, of course, along with the anthropologist viewpoints, the examples, and to help you with all of these things, I have already started working upon the 2025 PYQs. So there you will get all of these details so that you need not to spend your time in researching about all of these details. Fair enough. Let's move on with the next question. So, this is asking you to differentiate between the pedigree and the genealogical analysis and discuss the history and application of these methods in anthropological studies. So this question is kind of a very direct question because you're already studying about pedigree and genealogy. And mind it, this is also asking you for interlinkages or comparison of the topics which are part of two different sections, right? This is part of unit 9.1 and genealogy is part of unit 8. But nevertheless, you must have studied these two. So answering this should not be difficult for you at any point of time. And also, this is kind of a repetition from the PYQ itself, where these two topics were asked to you not as like a part which is asked as 2025, but separately as a different concepts, right? So, how you need to answer this particular question? So, it is clearly stating to differentiate, which means you have to differentiate it. Also, it is asking you for the history and the application. So, make sure you can either do it in the differentiation chart or you can separately deal with the history and application. But make sure that you specify this history and application because that is very, very important part of this particular question. So, as you know, this pedigree chart or the pedigree analysis is generally used in genetic to trace the biological inheritance, right? It is about the biological inheritance, and this genealogical method, which is developed by WHR River and often used by Morgan as well. So this is used to map the kinship, which means like when you are dealing this particular question, you are also bringing in the anthropologist and quoting some of the work which they have done. So that will give you a very well ready-made kind of an example to include over here, because it is used to map the kinship, it used to map the descent and the marriage rules, of course. Okay, so the demand is to compare, so you need to show the comparison. Try to use the tabular format if possible because that helps you visualize the differentiation better. and will be appreciated by the evaluator as well. Okay, and to summarize, you can write that the purpose is also different, like the application part, which is also a very important key point that you need to answer. That pedigree is mostly related with the biological purposes or the biological applications, while this genealogical is mostly associated with the socio-cultural purposes. Okay, so these two are very contrasting, and I think you will be able to answer this particular question. The next one is asking you that anthropology provides multi-dimensional understanding of human beings by bridging the gap between science and humanities. Elucidate. So when it says elucidate, which means you have to make it very, very clear with examples. Okay, that's what this particular directive means. Now, this question can be traced to your 1.1, in fact, 1.2 and 1.3 as well, because you will be getting the knowledge that you have gained throughout this particular topics while answering this particular question. And one good part is that this particular question was a part of our test series as well, and you could say that this is a direct question. And the level is also moderate because here it is testing you how you're utilizing all the knowledge that you already have. Also, this is something, a repetition of PYQs, those like very old PYQs, but still it is there. So, and anyway, whenever you are studying about anthropology, your focus is always on the holistic nature and the multidimensional approach that it has. So this question could be dealt in that particular way only. Okay, like for example, when you're talking about the biological, so there you are using the genetics or the skeleton analysis, for example, like in forensic, how you are doing the skeleton analysis and something like that. In the socio-cultural studies, you're using the meaning of rituals or symbols, what they signifies, right? And then you are combining these two. Okay, you are combining these two, like you are combining the biology with the legal justice, or the medical anthropology studies like both your diseases and the culture and the health beliefs, right? And there were various examples that I have also discussed in my videos. So the demand is to show like how anthropology is uniquely connecting these two, which is your biology and your culture. So the biology will come here and the culture will be dealt here. So that's how you will be answering this particular question. Now the 4B is asking you to write a note on Mousterian tool tradition and the culture and its maker. So basically you could see there is three part. One is the tool tradition, the second is the culture, and the third is the maker. So if you know about these three, you can structure your answer. And this forms a part of your 1.8, which is talking about the middle Paleolithic culture. And you could say that this is direct question, and I have leveled it as a moderate one because earlier also this particular culture was asked with respect to your Neanderthals. Because when you study about this Mousterian tradition, you will find that the Neanderthals or the early Homo sapiens were associated with it. All right, and in our notes also we have covered about this tool technologies. So basically, overall, the demand of this question, if you look closely, is to test your knowledge of the middle Paleolithic culture, okay, or the archaeology, you could say. Because this Mousterian tools were associated with Neanderthals, as I already mentioned, where they were using the flake technology and the levelized technology. All of these things were there. And they were also burying their dead and used fire, right? So you could also mention like example of the Shanidar cave, where burials with flower suggest some like symbolic meaning and thoughts, right? So the demand is to show the tool, the culture, and the maker. And I think you know about the tool, what kind of a tool technology, levelized technology, and all of these were used. The culture, burial, and the symbolic meaning, as I mentioned earlier. Then the maker, of course, the Neanderthal. So these things are clear to you, then you can definitely make a well structured answer out of this. So that was the demand of this particular question altogether. Question for today is critically examine James Frazer theory of evolutionism, elucidate the place of religion in modernity. So, this question is again an amalgamation of various topics that you are studying, which is your classical evolutionism, the postmodernism, and the religion. So, you could say this question is kind of a direct question, nothing as an extension, but you could say that this modernity part is somewhat not something very, very explicit, even though it could be derived well. But what needs to be focused is how you interlinkage various concepts, okay, that you have studied in various topic. You could say that this topic could be moderate for someone, but a little tougher for some as well, because we already know about some PYQs where you have been asked about James Frazer, and the theories of religion were always something a very favorite question of UPSC. Okay, so if you have if you are going through all of those PYQs, and if you have practiced the interlinkages well, then this question could be a little cakewalk for you again. And in our notes also, we have discussed something very briefly in modernism about the religion aspect as well. Okay, so, what you could answer in this particular question is that how the Fraser theory of evolution is shaping or talking about religion in general. And I think that should be the easiest part of this particular question, because talking about James Fraser is something that is directly mentioned as a part of your syllabus, and you should be well versed with it. Then you need to critique Fraser theory, which is again something I'm assuming you should not face any issue. And then you need to discuss like how the religion in modernity coexist, okay, with science. Because when we talk about the modern day, science is something or technology is something that comes to our mind, right? So there you need to show the coexistence of both. And while critiquing the Fraser theory, you could also mention about these things apart from the other anthropologist thought that is given upon Fraser's theory. So here basically you need to mention that how earlier the religion was something, you know, as an collective obligation, but now we see it is more of an individual choice, right? Rather than that rigid practices that were there, it is more of an individual choice these days. Also you could talk about that how the spiritual enlightenment is taking place of all those like ritual authorities. So earlier or even now also at some places you will find that there were so many rituals associated with certain practices or certain like special days. But what happens nowadays, even people are trying to relate it with the spirituality experience, not just going into the materialistic practices, rather than focusing much upon the spirituality or the enlightenment part of it. And you could also mention about how the technology is changing the way we practice our religion. I hope you must have heard about a digital puja, something like that, right? So these digital puja and everything is something won't require your physical presence over there. So these are like something you could mention, and then you can talk about few of the examples where there were like certain fixed dogmas. Okay, aisa hi karna hai, whether it is something related to your birth or death, there are certain things you need to do. But nowadays it is becoming a little flexible, right? Flexible based upon the interpretation, based upon like how well you are able to practice it. Because पहले जब आप देखोगे, even during the death rituals, there were so many things that needs to be done. But nowadays people are trying to make it a little flexible to suit the present conditions. तो ये सारी चीज़ें हैं which you could mention in this particular answer. Okay, so overall if you see like the all the 6 questions we have discussed in today's video, you will find a similar trend, and that trend is answering this question would require you to do interlinkages. You just cannot answer any of these questions in isolation. If you're trying to do so, you may not be able to fulfill the demand of it. Also, you could use your GS knowledge very well while answering these questions in terms of examples and everything. Apart from whatever theory material that you are reading for your anthropology, you could very well use your GS material plus your current affairs if it is something that comes to your mind. Okay, so that is how the questions are evolving. Also we have seen that none of these questions you could say is something like out of syllabus, right? There are extensions, there are some twists and turns, but nothing out of syllabus. And also at the same point of time, PYQ still remains the hero. Okay, so PYQ is something you should not ignore at any cost. So I think these are the takeaways from these discussion, and I will bring the next block very soon. So for now, thank you so much.